The marketplace was loud and full of dust. Merchants shouted, animals pulled carts, and the smell of sweat mixed with burning oil lamps. In the middle of it, a girl stood chained by the wrist. Her body was wide, her frame soft, her steps heavy. She lowered her head, trying to hide her face from the staring eyes. The people laughed as she was pushed forward, calling her names. Her stepfather held the chain and dragged her like she was nothing more than cargo. His eyes were red from drink and his voice slurred as he shouted at the traders. Who wants her? Too wide, too soft, too big for use, but strong enough for hard work. Take her off my hands. A single flask will do. The crowd roared with laughter. Some aliens nudged each other, mocking the girl's shape. Not fit for breeding, one hissed. Her size will crush any mate. Another spat on the ground. She eats more than she's worth. The stepfather waved his hand angrily. Shut your mouths. She's worth something. I'll take a drink, nothing more. One flask, strongest liquor you have. He pointed to a trader who carried bottles in his crate. You there, give me your drink, and she's yours. The trader eyed the girl. His nose wrinkled as if her presence was a burden. For a flask? She's not worth that. Too clumsy, too soft, too much flesh, no purpose. The stepfather raised the chain and yanked her close, almost pulling her to the ground. She stumbled but kept silent, her lips trembling. He spat on the ground. Worthless, but better than nothing. She has hands. She can clean. She can carry. Take her. The trader shook his head, turning away. The laughter of the crowd grew louder. Some threw scraps at her feet, rotten food, broken pieces of glass, mocking gifts. Her cheeks burned red, but she did not speak. From the corner of the marketplace, a pair of eyes watched. A human stood under the shadow of a broken pillar. His clothes were plain, dusty from travel, but his presence was different. He did not laugh. He did not mock. His gaze stayed fixed on the girl, calm but sharp, like a blade hidden under cloth. The stepfather noticed him and shouted, You there! Human, do you want her? You people take anything. She's strong, big bones. Give me a flask, and she's yours. The human stepped forward slowly. The noise of the marketplace seemed to fade for a moment. His boots crunched on the dirt as he came closer. The girl raised her head, her eyes meeting his. For a second, the chain around her wrist felt heavier. She expected him to laugh like the others, to mock her shape, to turn away. But he didn't. He looked at her, really looked at her, and said nothing. The stepfather grinned, thinking he had found a buyer. One flask. That's all. Cheap price for a body that can work. Take her. The human's voice was steady when he finally spoke. I don't pay in flasks. I don't trade with drink. The crowd booed. Then leave. Don't waste time, someone shouted. But the stepfather frowned. Then what do you offer, human? The man's lips curved into the faintest smile. A promise. The crowd exploded with laughter. A promise. Worthless, empty air. They jeered and shouted insults. Mad human. He must be drunk himself. Who trades a girl for words? The stepfather's grin widened. His pride was already drowned in drinks, and his greed made him blind. A promise, eh? Fine. I'll take it. She's yours, human. You promise whatever you like. I only want my drink, and I'll get it elsewhere. He shoved the chain forward, almost knocking the girl into the dust. The human caught it before she fell. His hand brushed her wrist, but it was not rough. He unhooked the clasp and let the chain drop. The metal clattered against the stones, loud even over the noise of the marketplace. The girl stood frozen, not moving, not believing what just happened. She looked at him with wide eyes. He leaned closer and spoke low enough that only she could hear. You're coming with me now. Her heart pounded. Fear rushed through her. What if he was just like the others? What if he had only freed her to use her later? She shook her head slightly, trying to step back. But the human's gaze did not waver. His eyes held no hunger, no cruelty, only calm strength. The marketplace watched in silence now, the laughter fading into whispers. No one understood. Why would a human take her? Why accept a body everyone else had rejected? The girl felt the weight of every eye pressing against her back. She wanted to run, but her legs were weak. She wanted to speak, but no words came out. All she could hear was the echo of his voice, firm, certain, unshaken. You're coming with me now. And for the first time in her life, she believed someone might mean it. The human walked with calm steps, leading her away from the noise of the marketplace. The crowd still whispered behind them, but no one dared follow. The girl's wrists felt strange without the weight of chains. She kept glancing at him. unsure if this was another trick, another game meant to hurt her later. His silence made her more uneasy than words would have. At the edge of the square, the stepfather shouted after them, his voice thick with drink. "She's yours now, human. Don't come crying when she eats more than she works. Too wide, too soft, too useless." His laugh carried through the dusty air, but the human did not turn back. He placed his hand on the girl's shoulder gently, as if guiding rather than controlling. She flinched at his touch, expecting pain, but it never came. He spoke for the first time since leaving the square. "What's your name?" Her lips trembled before she answered in a small voice. "Lyra," he nodded once. "I'm Kale." He didn't say more, just kept walking, but the sound of her name on someone's lips without insult felt unreal to her. They moved through narrow streets until they reached the edge of the city. The girl finally asked, her voice breaking, "Why? Why did you take me?" He stopped, looking out at the horizon where the suns dipped low. His answer was simple, "Because you needed to be taken." She frowned, confused. "For what? I am nothing." Kale turned to her, his eyes steady. "You've been told that so many times you started to believe it, but I don't." The words struck her harder than the whip her stepfather used. She wanted to laugh, to cry, to shout at him for lying, but his face gave no sign of trickery. His calmness unnerved her more than cruelty ever had. They passed by a stall where a trader leaned out, watching. "Human, why waste your effort? She'll slow you down. Her kind cannot even breed. Everyone knows this." Kale stopped, his hand tightening into a fist, but his voice stayed steady. "Everyone knows too many lies." The trader spat, shaking his head, muttering curses. But Kale didn't argue further. He just kept walking. The girl hurried to keep up, fear tugging at her steps. She whispered, "What promise did you give my stepfather? What will you owe him?" Kale glanced at her briefly. "I promised nothing to him. My promise was to you." She froze in place, her breath caught. "To me?" "Yes," he said simply. "That I would not let them keep you there, that you would leave with me." She stared at him as if he had spoken in another language. No one had ever promised her anything. Promises were for others, for those with value, for daughters born to noble families or warriors strong enough to win respect. Not for her. She whispered, "Why me?" Kale met her gaze and said, "Because you are still standing." Her knees weakened at those words, and she almost fell, but his hand steadied her. No one had noticed her strength before. No one thought surviving shame and pain was strength. Yet this human said it so easily, like it was a truth he had always known. They left the last stone wall of the city behind them. Darkness stretched across the desert road. The girl hugged herself, shivering though the night was warm. Kale moved ahead with a steady pace, glancing back now and then to make sure she followed. Her mind spun with doubts. Was he savior or captor? Did he see something in her, or was she only a burden he would regret? She wanted to ask, but fear sealed her lips. All she could do was walk behind him, her chains gone, but her heart still tied in knots. And yet, deep inside, a spark of hope flickered for the first time. The desert stretched wide under the twin moons, sand glowing faintly in the pale light. The air was silent, except for the crunch of boots and the soft drag of her steps. Kale walked ahead with steady movements, his eyes scanning the horizon as if he had traveled this road many times before. Lyra followed close, her breath heavy, her heart twisting with unease. The silence was broken by a sudden sound, wheels grinding against rock, laughter echoing in the night. From the dunes ahead, figures emerged riding metal carts pulled by beasts with glowing eyes. Raiders. Their armor was mismatched, their faces painted with sharp streaks of color. They circled like wolves, surrounding Kale and Lyra. One raider leaned forward, his teeth sharp, his voice mocking. "What's this? A human walking with a useless one? Too wide, too soft, too weak to sell. You must be desperate, stranger." The others laughed cruelly, pointing at Lyra. Her face burned with shame, and she lowered her head. The words felt like knives, the same ones she had heard all her life. But Kale did not flinch. His voice cut through the laughter, calm and steady. "Leave us." The raiders howled louder. Another shouted, "Leave you? No, human. We'll take the flask you traded her for and then take her too. She can feed the beasts, if nothing else." He drew a blade and rode closer. Kale moved Lyra behind him with a single step. His hand rested on the hilt of a short blade at his side. He didn't draw it yet. His stance was firm, his shoulders still, but his presence was like stone ready to break under pressure. The raider lunged first, his blade flashing in the moonlight. In one swift move, Kale dodged, grabbed the raider's arm, and twisted it until a sharp crack echoed. The raider screamed, dropping his weapon. Kale pushed him aside, calm as ever, as if he had done this 100 times. The others roared in anger and charged. Lyra stumbled back, fear locking her in place, but Kale moved forward like a storm. He struck one raider across the face with his fist, dropped another with a sharp kick to the chest, and blocked a third with his blade now drawn. The clash of steel rang out, sparks flying in the dark. Lyra's breath caught. She had never seen anyone fight like this, not only with skill, but with purpose. Every move was precise, controlled, not wild or desperate. His eyes stayed calm even as chaos surrounded him. One raider slipped past him and rushed at Lyra. She froze, her body refusing to move. The raider raised his blade high, grinning with cruel delight. But before the strike could fall, Kale was there, pulling her aside and striking the raider down with one powerful blow. The man fell into the sand, groaning, his weapon lost. The circle of raiders broke. Fear spread among them as they realized this human was not prey. One by one, they pulled back, spitting curses but not daring to press further. Their laughter was gone now, replaced with silence and the sound of retreating wheels. The desert grew quiet again. Only the soft wind remained. Kale stood breathing steadily, wiping his blade clean before sliding it back into its sheath. Lyra stared at him, her heart pounding. He turned to her, his expression unchanged, as if nothing had happened. "You're safe," he said simply. Her knees trembled, and she had to steady herself on the sand. Safe. The word felt strange, heavy with meaning she had never known. She looked at him with wide eyes, unsure what to say. No one had ever fought for her before. No one had ever shielded her from insult, let alone from blades. Her lips parted, but no words came. Only the thought pulsed in her chest like a heartbeat. Maybe this human was not like the others. Maybe he truly meant to protect her. The fire crackled softly, its glow painting shifting shadows on the sand. Kale had built it quickly, using dry brush and stones, his hands moving with the ease of someone who had lived many nights under open skies. Lyra sat a short distance away, hugging her knees, her eyes fixed on the flames, but her thoughts far away. He handed her a piece of cooked meat on a flat stone. She hesitated, staring at it as if it were a trap. Slowly, with trembling fingers, she took it. The first bite filled her with warmth, but tears burned at the corners of her eyes. She did not understand why food from his hand felt so different from scraps thrown at her feet. Kale sat across from her, eating in silence. The only sounds were the fire's crackle and the desert wind brushing over the dunes. She kept sneaking glances at him, trying to read his face. There was no mockery there, no disgust. His eyes were steady, his jaw calm. He was unlike any man she had ever known. Finally, she whispered, her voice barely carrying, "Why do you treat me like this?" He looked up. "Like what?" "Like I matter." The words escaped before she could stop them. Shame filled her, and she lowered her gaze to the sand. "Everyone says I am too big, too soft, too useless. They said I can't be a wife, can't bear children, can't work like others. My stepfather said the only value I had was a drink in his hand." Her voice cracked, trembling like the flames before her. Kale did not interrupt. He let her speak, his silence stronger than pity. When she finished, her shoulders shook, and she buried her face in her arms. "You believe them," he said at last. His tone was not cruel, not soft, only certain. "That is why their words have power." Her head lifted slowly, confusion on her face. "What else can I believe? It's all I've ever been told." He leaned forward slightly, his eyes steady. "Strength isn't what they think it is. Not size, not speed, not what body can or cannot do. Strength is surviving when no one helps you. Strength is still walking after chains. You've done both." The firelight flickered across his face, making his words seem carved in stone. Lyra stared at him, unable to look away. No one had ever said such things to her. She wanted to believe him, but the years of scorn pressed against her chest like heavy stones. Before she could answer, a sound drifted on the night air, low, guttural, closer than the wind. Her body stiffened. Kale's hand slid to his blade instantly, his eyes scanning the darkness. The sound came again, followed by rustling among the rocks beyond the firelight. Lyra's breath quickened. Shapes moved in the shadows, too large to be human. A pair of glowing eyes blinked in the dark, then another, then more. The hairs on her neck rose. Kale stood, his back straight, his blade drawn. "Stay behind me." Her heart pounded as she clutched the edge of her cloak, her body trembling. She wanted to obey, to hide behind him, but the memory of the raiders flashed in her mind, the moment when Kale had stood before her like a wall against every blow. She swallowed hard, forcing herself to rise even though her knees felt weak. The shadows crept closer, slow and patient, circling the campfire. A growl rumbled, deep and hungry. Lyra's breath caught in her throat. She whispered, "What are they?" Kale did not take his eyes off the dark. Hunters. The fire hissed as if answering the threat, sparks snapping into the night. Lyra gripped her cloak tighter, fear flooding her veins, yet somewhere under the fear a strange feeling grew. Kale had fought for her against men, but beasts were different. What if even he could not stop them? The glowing eyes moved closer, and the circle began to close. The first beast lunged from the dark, its body low to the ground, claws slicing through the sand. Kale moved with a speed Lyra's eyes could barely follow, his blade flashing as it met the creature's strike. The beast shrieked, a sound sharp enough to rattle her bones before tumbling back into the shadows. Another came from behind, its teeth glowing faintly in the firelight. Kale turned to meet it, but this one was faster. Lyra's body froze, terror pressing into her chest. Her mind screamed to hide, to crouch behind the fire, to let him shield her. But her legs moved before she understood why. She stepped in front of him, her arms raised. The beast slammed against her body, throwing her to the ground. Pain tore through her shoulders, but she did not break. Her wide frame absorbed the blow, slowing the beast's strike. Kale was there in an instant, his blade driving deep into its side. The beast howled, thrashing, then stumbled away, bleeding. Lyra gasped, clutching her chest. She expected Kale to be angry, to call her foolish, but instead, he pulled her up gently. His hand pressed against her back, steadying her. His voice was calm, even in the chaos. "You saved me." Her heart stumbled at those words. Saved him? She shook her head, breathless. "I only stood there." "You stood when most would fall," he said simply, and then turned as another beast charged. His blade cut across the night again, clean and sharp. The pack circled tighter. The beasts moved in rhythm, their growls deep, their eyes shining. Lyra felt their hunger, their cruelty. She felt the weight of every insult ever thrown at her, too big, too soft, too weak. But when the next beast leapt, she didn't run. She grabbed a burning branch from the fire and swung it with all her strength. Flames burst across the air, striking the creature's snout. It screamed and reeled back into the night. Kale's glance at her was quick, but there was pride in it, something warm she had never seen before. "Good," he said, his voice sharp with focus. The fire roared higher as if feeding on their will. One by one, the beasts tested them, but each time, Kale's blade or Lyra's burning branch pushed them back. Finally, the leader of the pack, larger and scarred, stepped forward. Its growl was thunder rolling low in its chest. It lunged for Kale, faster and harder than the others. Kale met it head on, steel against claws, sparks lighting the dark. They struggled, the weight of the beast pressing down on him. Lyra saw the strain in his stance, the danger in the fight. Without thinking, she threw herself forward, slamming her body into the beast's side. Her weight drove it off balance long enough for Kale's blade to strike true. The leader collapsed into the sand, its growls fading into silence. The rest of the pack froze, their glowing eyes flickering with hesitation. Then, one by one, they slipped back into the darkness, their shapes melting into the dunes until only silence remained. The fire hissed softly again as if nothing had happened. Kale lowered his blade, his chest rising with steady breaths. He turned to her, his expression unreadable for a moment. Then he nodded once. "You're stronger than they ever knew." Her whole body trembled, not only from fear, but from something new, something powerful. She looked at the broken sand where the beast had fallen, then at Kale. His words echoed in her chest. Stronger than they ever knew. For the first time in her life, she believed it might be true. The road beyond the desert wound into a valley of stone and mist. Strange plants glowed faintly along the cliffs, their light reflecting off shallow pools of water. Lyra walked beside Kale now, not behind him. Her body still ached from the beast's attack, but something inside her had shifted. She no longer felt like a shadow dragged on a chain. At the far end of the valley, small fires burned in a cluster. Figures moved between crude shelters built of stone and wood. When they stepped closer, the shapes became clear. Aliens with twisted limbs, scarred faces, and broken wings. Outcasts. Some stared with hollow eyes, others whispered as Kale led her into the camp. One elder, his body thin but his eyes sharp, approached slowly. He studied Lyra with a long gaze, his wrinkled mouth parting as if in disbelief. "It cannot be," he whispered. "She carries the form of the ancients." Lyra stiffened, confusion rushing through her. She turned to Kale, but he said nothing. The elder called the others, and soon the camp circled around them, murmurs filling the air. Words she did not understand were spoken, pointing at her arms, her waist, her broad frame. She hugged herself, shame rising again, but this time the voices did not sound like mockery. They sounded like awe. Finally, Kale spoke, his voice steady as always. "You see it too." The elder nodded. "Her body is not weakness, it is survival. Our oldest records tell of women built like her. Wide to endure childbirth, full to withstand hunger, soft to absorb wounds others could not. Long ago, such women carried our clans through plague and famine." His voice trembled with memory. "She is not unfit, she is rare." Lyra's chest tightened. The words hit harder than the claws of the beasts. She shook her head, tears stinging her eyes. "No, my people said I was wrong, broken, unworthy." The elder's voice grew firm. "Your people forgot the truth. They twisted strength into shame. They feared what they could not understand. But you," he pointed at her with a trembling hand, "you are proof that our blood remembers." Kale's hand rested gently on her shoulder, grounding her. "This is why I took you," he said. "I knew what you were, even if you didn't. I saw it the moment I looked at you." Her breath came uneven, her heart pounding. She wanted to believe him, to believe them, but years of cruelty clung to her like chains. "How can I be strength," she whispered, "when all I have ever felt is weakness?" Kale's eyes softened, but his voice stayed steady. "Because you survived when no one wanted you to. And you saved me when you thought you couldn't. That is strength no lie can erase." The firelight around the camp seemed to grow brighter, the faces of the outcasts no longer pitying but reverent. They murmured her name as if it carried weight. Lyra felt it too, for the first time. Her name did not sound like shame. It sounded like beginning. Her knees weakened, and she sank into the sand, covering her face with her hands. For so long she had begged for a reason to exist. Now one was handed to her, not as a gift but as a truth buried in her very body. She was not too big, too soft, too unfit. She was made to endure, made to carry, made to protect life. When she lifted her face again, Kale was still watching her. His calm gaze gave her strength to breathe. Around them, the whispers of the outcasts rose into a chant, their voices trembling with hope. For the first time, Lyra did not feel like a burden. She felt like a key to something greater. And the weight she carried was no longer shame. It was purpose. The night was broken by shouts and the pounding of heavy boots. Torches lit the valley walls, their flames reflecting in the pools of water. Lyra's stepfather staggered at the front of a group of armed traders, his drunken face twisted in rage. Behind him stood the very man who had refused her in the market, his crate of flasks slung at his side. "There she is," the stepfather bellowed. "The fat burden who thought she could escape me. Hand her back, human, or I'll take her by force." His voice cracked with greed, spittle shining in the torchlight. "She belongs to me." The traders raised their weapons, iron blades and hooked spears gleaming. The outcasts stirred nervously, whispers breaking their fragile calm. Lyra's chest tightened, her body trembling as old fear clawed at her heart. For a moment she felt the weight of chains again, the shame of being dragged through dust, the humiliation of laughter that never ended. Kale stepped forward, blade resting at his side, his stance unshaken. His voice carried like stone dropped into still water. "She belongs to no one." The stepfather's laugh rang harsh. "She's useless, human. Nothing but wide flesh and wasted breath. Why fight for what has no worth?" Before Kale could answer, Lyra moved. Her feet pressed into the sand as she stepped past him, her body shaking, but her eyes burning with something new. She faced the crowd, her voice loud enough to cut through their jeers. "I am not for sale." The valley fell silent. The words seemed to echo against the stone cliffs. Even her stepfather blinked in shock, as if the daughter he had beaten and mocked could not have spoken them. She raised her chin higher. "All my life you told me I was too big, too soft, too weak. But I stood when you tried to break me. I lived when you wanted me gone. And tonight I stand here free. You cannot take me back. The stepfather snarled, his drunken fury spilling over. Silence! You are mine! He charged forward, hand reaching for her arm. Kale's blade flashed, blocking him with a single strike that sent sparks across the sand. The traders shouted, preparing to rush, but the outcasts moved too, stepping forward with makeshift weapons, their voices rising in defiance. The camp that had once lived in shadows now stood in a wall of bodies behind Lyra. The trader with the crate of flasks looked at her, his face pale. He muttered something under his breath about legends, then stepped back, fear breaking his courage. One by one, the others faltered, their weapons lowering. Kale's voice cut the air again, sharp and final. She has chosen. Leave, or none of you will. For a tense moment, the night held its breath. Then the stepfather spat on the ground, rage trembling in his body, but even he could see the numbers had shifted there. With a curse, he turned away, shoving past his own men. The torches retreated, their flames shrinking into the darkness until only silence remained. Lyra's chest heaved, her whole body trembling. She had never spoken against him, never dared to raise her voice. Now she stood in the open, her words carrying more power than chains ever had. Kale sheathed his blade and stepped beside her. He didn't speak, only looked at her with calm eyes that told her she had done more than survive. She had claimed herself. She reached for his hand, her palm hesitant at first, then firm. His grip was steady, grounding her. Around them, the outcasts bowed their heads, some whispering her name as if it were a banner. The night felt different now, no longer filled with fear, but with the weight of choice. Lyra knew the scars of her past would never vanish, but for the first time, they no longer chained her. She was not too wide, too soft, too full. She was strong enough to stand, strong enough to be free, and strong enough to begin again.